Oh, dear. Never been American for that matter either, but it's okay.
It's like the Falklands as well. That's fun. That's funny.
Okay. Good
Okay.
morning. Welcome to another In Conversation with myself, Paul Salahuddin Armstrong, and good afternoon and good evening to viewers elsewhere in the world. Today, I'm joined by Aisha Ali-Khan, the journalist, political activist, campaigner. She's done many things over the years. So please say hello, Aisha.
Hi everyone. Thank you so much, Paul, for inviting me to discuss certain topics that have been in the news this past week or so.
Yeah, I saw you on the news yesterday. You were talking about the situation in Ceuta, or Ceuta, as some people call it, this Spanish enclave on the North African coast, right next to Morocco. I mean, we
Mm.
all saw scenes which, certainly from the footage, they look quite shocking, with I think it was what 60,000 people that went over the border illegally from Morocco into the enclave. Um, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, look, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. The imagery that was coming out from Ceuta for the last couple of over the last couple of days was really concerning. We saw footage of men just coming out of trucks, hundreds of men. We saw young men. We saw footage of them running, being chased. It did look, I mean, it was not something that looked um, organized, safe. It just looked really, really chaotic and also deeply concerning as well. I mean, obviously at the time we don't know exactly how many people. I mean, over the days as the days progressed, it went from a couple of thousand to 10,000, 20,000, and then yesterday I think it was the final figure was around 60,000. The vast majority of whom have subsequently been returned. They've gone back to Morocco, wherever they've come. A small number have stayed and they have applied for asylum. So we'll see the exact figures over the next few days if the authorities will release those figures.
Yeah, I heard the Spanish army was brought in and they guided everybody back to the Moroccan border. But
Hmm.
I mean, there's so many aspects to this. I mean, one, it's like, yeah, it did look chaotic and stuff, but on the other hand, as even you mentioned just there were images that were I saw on social media as well, of trucks that had loads of people in the back that were then opened, I guess,
Hmm.
close to Ceuta, so that the people could actually join the group that was moving into Ceuta. Now, for those people to be in such numbers in the back of trucks, and there are at least several of them,
Hmm.
then there must be at least some degree of organization behind this. Uh,
Absolutely.
whoever is organizing that. I did a little reading myself, and it seems to be that something like this happens periodically, uh,
Hmm.
between Morocco and Spain, and there's this is one of the worst that's happened, in recent history. But it does seem that this has happened before. I think last time was around 2020 or 2021, something like that. And there was also a rush into Ceuta as well. Uh, and it seems to be like used as a bargaining chip by Morocco when in their political disputes with Spain. But I mean, on this occasion, I mean, it's created quite a lot of like political fallout for Spain itself, not only between Morocco and Spain, but also in the reaction of other European states to Spain and the pressure that's being levied upon the government there.
I think that is something that we definitely need to pay attention to. I think obviously it has always been a flashpoint to people trying to enter Ceuta. However they've tried through swimming to the coastline, climbing the borders, the actual wall they have all around. People have constantly tried because obviously they see that as their entry point into Europe. And what people don't understand is that actually, if you, it doesn't matter if you actually land on CETA soil, if you don't meet the criteria, you will be deported, you will be returned back to whichever border entry you've made, you know? And so a lot of people were mistaken, sorry. And I do believe that social media played a massive part in this. I mean, some of the footage I saw, some of the news reports where young people were being interviewed by, channels, news channels, and they said, look, we just found out about it because our friends sent us some stuff online, and we thought, let's go for a day, let's go and have fun.
Yeah.
And these are young boys, and that was actually quite concerning for me because I thought, you're willing to risk your life because everybody else is trying to do it. So you think, oh, let's see what this is about. And you're 14, 15, 16, and you're swimming in these waters. I mean, people drowned, like nearly 70 people
You mentioned
have
that, yeah.
died in the last few days. And it was just really concerning. And then obviously we could talk about the reasonings behind it. What's motivated these people? Is it because they want a fun day out? Because it isn't exactly Blackpool, is it? Or is it because
No,
they
it,
want a chance at a better life? And if this is something that gets them somehow onto mainland Europe,
I,
well,
I
surely they're
found
going to take the chance.
I found it interesting listening to some of the TV interviews with some of the people as they were going back,
Mhm,
because they said things like, "Oh, I don't want anything from this place. I just came here
mhm,
because, that was what some of them were saying. It's like it's a bit
mhm,
odd." And there was one young lad who, exactly like you said, he just said, "Well, I just wanted a fun day out."
mhm, mhm.
I mean, but he could have died on that fun day.
Yeah,
I
that's
mean,
exactly my point. It's
and
it's
there were
it's
people who
quite
died in the
bizarre.
sea. And why were they
Mhm,
going in the sea as well? And I heard that there was this court case in Spain recently, which said that if you arrive by sea, then you
mhm,
have to be accommodated.
mhm,
So,
mhm,
but I think it was meaning people that came across the Mediterranean and arrived in Spain, but they
mhm,
interpreted it in this way, quite literally. So they went through the sea to try to get into Ceuta that way.
mhm.
Um,
The level of misinformation out there, Paul, is quite staggering, and we can blame.
and also the fact people
Um,
need to realize Ceuta is in North Africa.
mhm,
Just like Gibraltar, it's British,
mhm.
but it's connected to Spain.
Spain, yeah,
It's not connected to London or Dover.
no.
I mean, Ceuta is physically connected to the Moroccan border. It's
Hmm.
not connected to the French border. It's not in the Spanish mainland.
And
Um,
again, this is the misinformation that
yeah,
people are being subjected to, and it's quite telling. I mean, behind all of this, there seems to have been a really well coordinated campaign. I mean, you just
yeah,
mentioned this now. There's a level of organization. I mean, somebody's clearly paid truck drivers to drive people.
but they're
Those
not going to
people
do it
have
for
been
free.
told,
Yeah.
yeah, and those people would have been told something for them to get on the trucks in the first place.
Mm.
And then, the amount of people we're talking about hundreds. I just saw one truck that, like you referenced, open, and I mean, I think I stopped counting after about 30 people, 30
Yeah.
young men that just came over. And that kind of imagery, I mean, when you actually go back about 10 years, 11 years actually, Paul, when we had the Brexit vote in the UK, and the imagery that Nigel Farage used at the time, which is completely wrong. It was a complete and out and out lie when he stood in front of a massive poster showing a line of refugees and saying, if we basically stay within the EU, these refugees are going to come from Turkey into Europe. Through our borders. Complete lie, but it worked. It stoked the fears of the British people and obviously led to the Brexit vote
But
going through.
leaving
So,
leaving the European Union never seemed to stop that.
well, it's always
Yeah.
continued, and
It
I
actually got
found,
worse actually after we left, because and I think part of that was also because we had cooperation mechanisms that were in place with European partners beforehand, which of course had to be completely
went, yeah.
rewritten and rebuilt after Brexit.
I mean,
Um,
when you mention this, and it's still quite staggering because I've had so many debates over the years with people who supported Brexit, and then they're complaining about the migrants and boats coming, and I have to remind them continuously that the British border was in Calais before Brexit.
Mm,
So basically, that filtered out many of the migrants because the French authorities handled all of this for us on our behalf, and those migrants never really had the chance to enter our waters and our throughout, enter the UK through the coastline. Obviously, once Brexit happened, France had no obligation to us, and you can't complain about, why French, authorities have let us down and they've done this. But why? Why are you complaining? French authorities should only care about their own borders. There's the cooperation that we had, both countries had, that ended once Brexit was signed into existence. So, of course, they're not going to do us a favor by continuing to spend their own hard earned cash on trying to keep our borders safe. And again, these are the sort of things, the imagery, and people, it was the fear. For me, it was always about stoking the fear and saying, look at these hordes of, migrants and refugees and your third world inhabitants are coming over and they're going to take over. And that was like 11 years ago. And that rhetoric has become so explicit now. You have people online all the time,
mm.
telling me to, I'm constantly being told to go home. I'm constantly being told I'm not welcome here. I'm not
And this is the
British.
thing that I hate as well, because I mean, you're British, you're born here, you
Of
grew
course,
up here.
I was
I
born in the
mean, in
UK.
that sense, you're no different to me,
Mm.
irrespective where your parents or your family originally came from. I mean, if you go to a South Asian country now, they're going to see you as British. They're not going to see you as a local.
Absolutely. And
And
that's always been the case where we're
yeah,
too
and the
British,
thing
we're
is,
too
your
Western for
parents, I'm
Pakistan.
sure,
Yeah.
like a lot of people from South Asian countries, they came here legitimately, legally. They were actually invited to work in the.
Yeah.
Many,
And my
I don't know
parents
about your
worked.
parents specifically, but I know my first Sheikh, Sufi Abdullah, he was a veteran of the British Army. He served during the Second World War and actually fought the Nazis.
Mm,
So, I
mm,
mean, when he come to the UK, it was someone who was a former British soldier who come to the UK.
mm, mm,
When his relatives came to the UK, they're coming from the family of a British soldier,
mm,
even though that family is from what is now Pakistan. So, I mean, these are things that people need to bear in mind. Not all immigration is the same, and in these cases, we know who the people are. They've come in legally and legitimately,
mm,
and legal and legitimate immigration always happens. It's always going to happen, and like anything. Yes, you can point to positives and negatives, but it's legitimate and it brings a lot of positives. I do think there are issues with undocumented illegal
mm,
migration. A lot of the people that are coming over the channel, they're coming with no documentation. If
yeah.
they had it, they've dropped it in the sea. And so by the time they arrive in Britain, we don't know who they are. We don't know if they're members of ISIS or Al Qaeda, or if they're just some harmless person who's looking for a
Yeah.
better life. We have no idea
Yeah.
one way or the other. And I mean, if they are genuine asylum seekers, then they should be able to turn up at Heathrow Airport and say, this is who I am. I can't go back to my country. I'm in serious danger of my life. I need
Mm,
your help.
mm,
And if they come with that and they tell us who they are and they have that reason, we have an international legal obligation to help
mm,
them, and we must. But it depends who they are. So I
mhm.
think there's these different categories of migration, and not all migrants are the same. And also, not all British people look the same these days, because people. I'm talking about people that are born in this country, second, third, fourth
Mm,
generation,
mm, mm,
even.
mm.
But they're British, and you can't tell those people to go back home when this is the only country that they've known.
I mean, this is the funny thing when people say, go home, and I'll say, well, I'm already home. I'm in
Mm.
Keighley, and it almost blows their mind because in their minds, and again, it's misinformation that's out
But
there.
even
You
believe
have
it or
this.
not, I mean, I'm English as can be. But if I wear a Turkish hat or a turban or
Mm,
something, or Shawaki, I've been told on occasion, go back
go
home, go
home.
back to where you came from. I'm like, what, Redditch? And they're like, no, where you really from? "No, Afghanistan or something." I'm like, oh, I'm not from Afghanistan.
But I think again, I mean, we're joking about it now, but it is quite serious, and we are seeing this huge increase in like racist attacks, and almost within the community, literally, nearly everybody who has been subjected to an attack, whether it's language, whether it's violence, or threats. is there any point in
People have been
complaining to the
killed because of this,
authorities?
and
Well, this
that's
is
yeah,
obviously now we are seeing this where people are, harmed. They're not only being harmed, but they're being killed, and I think it's going to get worse. I mean, you saw the riots a couple of years ago, following the Southport attack, and it was a miracle nobody was killed, because those people that were rioting and setting fire to migrant hotels and so on, they actually did not care. I mean, their whole idea was, we need to burn these people, we need to attack these people, that was their whole motivation. Um, and I was absolutely, I was so grateful, by the way, that nobody actually got seriously injured, but it scared a lot of
yeah.
people. And I think that was probably the first time that a lot of people actually realized that there's this kind of really horrible undercurrent kind of running through British society right now, where, whatever people thought, their racist thoughts and so on, now they're coming forward. Now they're actually openly writing about it. Now they're not being reticent
Mm.
in sharing what they're actually thinking. And that was
Well,
an
we're living in a
eye-opener.
particularly scary time where, I mean,
It's
anti-Semitism
very
has
scary. Yeah,
skyrocketed, anti-Muslim hatred has
absolutely.
skyrocketed, hatred and xenophobia against people who look different has skyrocketed.
Mm,
People who are perceived as Muslim, even if they're not, and they're
mm,
being attacked. I mean,
mm,
all of this kind of hatreds, that it's like Pandora's box has opened, and
mm.
it's quite different to how the situation was even like 10, 20 years ago, and it is very worrying.
I think Saida Varsi, Baroness Saida Varsi, wrote an article, and it was very interesting. And she said something along the lines that racism has passed the dinner table test, i.e., what is allowed to be discussed when you're a group of middle class friends and you're talking about it, and the idea of making crass jokes at the expense of Muslims, at the expense of people of color, and that's become more and more mainstream. And I remember reading it, thinking, oh, okay. And now I totally agree with this, because you are getting people that are making comments all the time. I mean, my son had an incident last year on the train where, he was basically sworn at and he was called a smelly P word. And he's a young guy. And I remember feeling so outraged. And I remember writing on X as well, saying, I don't know where he got his self-restraint from, because had that been me, I would not have been able to control myself, but he did, thank God. Um, but just the kind of mindset people have over basic things like, a seat on a train,
Mm.
so that was, and my son is British born.
Well,
He cannot
mm,
speak any language, by the way. This is another point of contention amongst me and my peers, is our children are so British. They can't speak any other language other than English. I mean, they do try. My son does try. I mean, I speak Punjabi, Urdu, Mirpuri, and a few other languages, and he just can't speak anything properly. And it's really funny because he does not see himself anything other than British. And then way, way, way down the list, it's like Pakistani, Kashmiri, but that's because of my parents. But I am British, fully British. And to have these kind of
my,
incidents,
my children
uh,
have experienced things as well because my
mm,
wife is originally from China. She's naturalized British Chinese. And
mm,
so my children are mixed now. They're kind of white passing, but
mm,
my middle daughter, she looks a bit more Asian, and she's actually told me things that she's experienced as well, both at school, outside of school. Even interesting, at school, she goes to a school with a lot of British Indian background people, and she said
mm.
how racist some of them were towards her, which shocked me because one of the
Yeah.
reasons I actually sent her to that school was that I thought, the fact that it had more people of ethnic minority backgrounds, there would be less of that. But I mean, it's not always racism coming
Mm,
from people who are white towards people who are not
mm,
white. It's there's racism even between people of different backgrounds,
mm,
um,
mm, mm.
and that can be just as nasty.
Oh, absolutely. And this is something that's always troubled
Sometimes
me.
more nasty even as well.
More,
Sometimes
yeah.
I've experienced that myself.
It's actually baffling because people just assume. that South Asians, for example, are just one huge block of people,
mm,
and we're all the same, and we all speak the same language, and we all dress the same, and we all think the same, and we're not. And if you actually dissect it, you've got the Punjabis,
mm.
and you've got the Kashmiris. Then you dissect it further, and the Punjabis are Faisalabadis, Lahoris, and then you've got the Sindhis, the Karachites, and it just,
You've
and
got
then you
caste
just,
as well
and then you've got
within
the
Pakistani
caste, so you've
communities.
got
Yeah.
the and I don't believe in any of that rubbish, but
But
people
some
do.
people
So then
do. Yeah,
people, and families and Rajas and Chowdhuries and all this stuff. I
yeah.
mean, Islam always taught, I mean, the main aspect of Islam is that we're all equal and we all should be treated equally. So these little categories and subcategories, for me, they're alien. They shouldn't exist, but they do exist. Um, so I think, when we talk about racism, and I'm so glad you've pointed it out, because we do have an issue. We do have people looking at each other and looking down at each other because cultural heritage, ethnic heritage. You've got the Pathans as well. You've got all these different minority groups within the South Asian umbrella, um and of course there's tension. There shouldn't be, as far as I'm concerned. We should all be living in harmony together, but of course there is, and we've got to acknowledge it as well. And I remember when I was married to my ex-husband, and I was first I'm from Multan. I'm not even from
Mm,
Kashmir, and a majority of the people in Punjabis, sorry, in the UK are from around Faisalabad, around sort of Bir Mahal, all these kind of local areas. But we're from Multan, and very few families where in the UK are from that same region. And so my language is not even a proper Punjabi language; it's more Saraiki. But it's obviously, intermingled now with Punjabi. And so
that's the
again,
thing
these
people
are
don't realize as well. Oh, do you
people
speak
don't.
Indian? Do you speak Pakistani? No, what Urdu, Gujarati, Hindi, Sindhi. There's so many different languages that are, within that subcontinent. I mean, it's like Europe. How many languages are in Europe? I mean, if you think of the size of India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh, I mean, it's
It's huge,
uh,
absolutely huge. But again,
and you've
if we're
got the
going to
Dalit caste as well, which they
the
still suffer racism,
huge
both
amounts,
in the
huge.
subcontinent and also
Mm,
it's been brought here
mm,
within
mm.
diaspora communities.
But
And
I think it's about colorism. We can't talk about this without mentioning colorism and how obsessed. And I think that is definitely a throwback to the British Raj, when, the idea of beauty, the standard idea of beauty in South Asia is being light skinned as possible. And obviously people, I mean, can you believe when I was young, growing up, I was considered dark skinned, and my nickname at home was Galo, like that, which means the black one. And that kind of idea
I
where
don't know, it's
any
always baffled me. Yeah, I mean, I think a bit of color it looks beautiful, but
but I think it's really telling. I mean, some people now, obviously, we've moved on a lot, so
mm.
thank God we don't have this obsession with being as light skinned as possible. But I remember when I was in Pakistan and I was a 12, 13-year-old
Also,
teenager.
I will let you carry on, but I'll disagree with you slightly on this one. Yeah,
No, I was given literally
mm.
bleach cream when I
Yeah.
went to Pakistan. They said, "Oh, you're too dark skinned. Let's get you bleached." And I didn't know any better, so I tried it. And I think I've only ever used bleach cream twice on my face, and it was, what the hell? I've got blonde hair now on my face. What is this? But honestly, this idea
You
of
see this
being,
all across. I mean, also in the Philippines, it's quite common that
oh
people use
yes,
this, and it's not just a British Raj thing. I mean, this predates that
mm,
because even I mean, if you think about it, you had like the high caste people during
mm,
Mughal times and before that that were lighter skinned,
mm, mm.
and they were
And
they
many
were they
stayed
were
out of the sun.
racist to the
Mm,
Dalits, and the Dalits were darker skinned. Some of them actually it looked like Africans even. And
mm,
it's they were always persecuted long before even the British went to the subcontinent.
mm.
So I mean, yeah, you can certainly apply some blame to the British Empire for maybe not doing more about it, but this predated the British Empire, and I don't know what it is because it's something that you find in many societies around the world where people are, you know, looked up to because they're lighter skinned or treated
I
badly
think it's
because they're
also because
darker
of the
skinned.
social class, because
Yeah.
if you were poor, you had to work out in the fields, manual labor, wherever, farming, tilling the land. So you basically had to go out and earn whether you work, sorry, whether you were a man or a woman. Whereas if you were from a better social class, you'd stay indoors and you'd get other people to do your work. And if you go back into medieval England and all these other, I mean, we had, I was in the, obviously I worked for the House of Commons many years ago, and there's literally like walls of our kings and queens and so on dressed in all this they had the head covered and they had all these long flowing robes. And one of the kids I was with, they said, oh, they dress like Muslims. And it was like, yeah, actually the women, they've got the full hijab on, they've got long flowing garments. Oh, but that was a symbol of wealth. If you basically were rich, you could wear long flowing garments because it didn't matter if it touched the ground, because you would be indoors and not out in the dirty streets. If you had your head covered and so on, that was just the way people dressed back then. But also it was because you had to differentiate yourself from people that were poor or people from a lower social class. And again, I mean, why do we have these divisions in society? That's one of my biggest issues. I mean, we started by talking about migrants, but we have to acknowledge that these people are, Morocco is a very poor country. These countries, I mean, apart from tourism, and I've been to Morocco so many times, and I have really good friends, and absolutely love going to Morocco. But the sad reality is that these people have very little opportunities in their lives. The only way that they can actually do make a better a sort of better life for themselves is by trying to get into Europe or marrying somebody. And then this goes into something else which, Paul, is of huge concern to me, and it's something that a lot of women activists have been talking about, is this idea of British men, Pakistani men going to Morocco and having these temporary marriages with these young Moroccan women and just exploiting them for sex, and knowing that they're poor, and knowing that we can pay them
That
a
is
hundred
actually
pounds.
something you
It's a
see.
huge issue,
Yeah.
and I've
You
been
see
so
it
many
here.
times.
You also see it with some other countries where wealthy
Mhm,
men go to poorer
mm.
countries or countries that have experienced war zones, and there's now
Yes, yeah.
poor people left over, and it's single women that are like
Mhm.
widowed with
Or
children,
orphaned,
and
yeah.
yeah, and they're exactly. It is a big problem around the world,
Mm. We need to
and
talk about this as well. I mean, very few people want to talk about it, because obviously nobody wants to think that, that your neighbor is a predator, or he's basically taking advantage of somebody who is too poor to say no. And I've heard stories, horror stories, where men have gone and these young girls, their only way of life now is to basically use their bodies just so that they can feed themselves and their children and their families. And these men have gone, and a vast majority of them are Pakistani men who've gone, and they'll pay somebody a week for basically sex, and that 100 odd pounds that they'll pay, or 200, whatever it is, that's a
at all.
lifeline. They can just, yeah, I mean, they can actually, for me, it's okay, you want to do something charitable. And this is the mindset of some of these men, that we're doing these women a favor, we're such good men, where basically this is a form of charity for us. But actually it isn't, because you're getting sexual favors in return, and you're exploiting this woman who
I thought they
you
were
could just
giving
give the money
thousands of
to.
pounds or something. I mean,
Oh, no,
but
no, no, no,
that
no,
just,
no, no.
my gosh,
And
that
and
is.
again, it's about, I mean, we could talk, I mean, this is a completely different conversation we're
I mean, the
talking.
level of injustice in
It's
that
it's
is just
so
immense.
unjust. It's so unjust. And if you talk about it, again, it's a very hidden topic, and people don't want to talk about it, because again, it's like you're pointing fingers at the Muslim community, and you're doing the far right's work for them. And I've always had these allegations made against me every time I've tried to raise awareness about difficult subjects like, the sexual exploitation of young women and girls. But how are we supposed to challenge these awful practices if we don't talk about them?
But the
And
thing
these
is, I
men,
mean, if people say that, don't they
hmm,
think that the people that are doing these horrible things are doing the far
hmm,
right's work for them?
absolutely. But
I
the
mean,
idea
you're not
is
the one
that,
doing those things. You're the one that's talking about them and saying we have the
yeah,
problem here. Let's deal with it. You know,
But that's always the problem. Why are you raising awareness when these are things that are hidden? Nobody's talking about them. Nobody knows about them. So they can carry on,
but how
and nobody
stupid do
needs
they
to
think
know.
people are? You just need to look on social media. Loads of people know about these things. You know, it's yeah. And if
I
there's
mean,
no
again,
Muslims in this country speaking up and questioning these
hmm,
things, I get this sometimes as well, then it's like we're going to be just assumed as being all in agreement with that, or that it's part of Islam, or something
hmm,
that we have to do as Muslims. No, it's not. It's actually, in many of these cases, I mean, it's like abusing women, or,
hmm.
you know, using them in that way.
Domestic
It's
violence,
totally
domestic
haram.
abuse. It
You know,
is haram.
it's forbidden
Absolutely,
within
it's
Islam.
haram, and
It even
it's
goes against the principles of the Indo-Pakistani communities, whether they are Muslims or Sikhs or Hindus. All of them have principles on these things. That it goes against those cultural principles that are deep-seated within the culture. So whichever way you look at it, I mean, it's not a true representative of the communities that these people come from. And
no,
so
no,
we
and
should speak out against it.
we should. And there's something quite interesting. I was asked to speak at a conference many years ago. So one of the things that our Prophet ﷺ did was there was this kind of half marriage
Mm.
in Mecca at the time of Jahiliyyah. And basically, a woman she would be married, but she wouldn't be given the rights of a wife. So she was neither here nor there. And emotionally, she was in a lot of, turmoil. And the Prophet banned this. He said this is completely unfair to the woman. A woman, in order to feel the emotional, like safety, emotionally, psychologically, and physically, needs to, know where she stands with a man, whether it's a husband or, not a husband. And so this practice was banned, and it's something that very few people know about or even talk about because it's been lost into, into history. And so when I was looking into this, and I thought this is actually the same situation for many women, not only in the UK,
Mm.
Muslim women, but also in places like Morocco and Pakistan as well. I know lots of, of very older men.
I think it's
My own
actually
family members have done
the
this.
situations that we're talking about are
Hmm,
worse than that, because
hmm,
even under that system, the woman would be given something of value. Not
hmm,
like
hmm.
what's £100 in this day and age? You
It's
know,
nothing.
that
Yeah.
they would be given something of real value in
Hmm,
return for the the company that they are giving that man
hmm.
for a period of time. So it's like it would still be better than the
Hmm.
situation now. That is actually quite staggering when you think about it. You know,
I mean, look, I genuinely thought things might get better. 10 years on, it's still, in my opinion, they've gotten worse. And a lot of these men will go out there and actively pursue these young women, promise them, marriage and a commitment and a life together. Once these women have basically, fallen for these men, that's when the reality comes out that these men are married, they've got children in the UK, they're not these high flying rich businessmen. They're just normal taxi drivers or takeaway owners or people on benefits. But now they've got somebody that they've basically enticed into this kind of relationship. And some have had temporary nikahs as well, which, you know, all my life the understanding had been a marriage is for life. It's a real commitment. You don't just enter into a into a relationship, sorry, temporarily, into a marriage temporarily under Islamic law. But that's exactly what's going on. And Saudi scholars authorize this. Like, what the hell? So these are sort of injustices that people don't
you
talk
get a
about,
similar
people
thing
don't know
in
about.
Iran as well, and
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's that's the Shia, that's part of
it's
Shia
in Iraq as
religion
well. You
customs.
know,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I mean,
But
the thing is, it's worse than, I mean, if people talk about, like, in the West, you know, people have mistresses, or they have a
hmm,
second girlfriend or something. I'm not condoning or saying any, but I'm just saying, if you think about it, that's actually more straight than
Mm-hmm.
saying something is a marriage when it's not a marriage. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, if someone knows it's just a fling and there's nothing permanent, and they're an adult. I mean, that's an important thing. I mean, you go to Iraq and
Consent. I
you go
mean,
to Iran.
yeah.
I mean, they're not always adult, but I mean, if they're an adult woman and they still choose to do that, then it's
Mm,
two adults and two consenting adults that they're responsible for the decisions that they make. But
mm,
I mean, it's like if promises have been made that this is a
mm,
marriage when it's not a marriage, then
mm,
that's actually worse than if someone is like, okay, it's just a holiday fling, and I know it's just a holiday fling. I know I've got no
mm.
future with this guy, but I'm just going to enjoy it while it's there. I mean, that's actually more straight than this.
I think there's a lot of deception, and a lot of these men, they're also lying to
But
the
they're
wives
lying
at
to
home.
themselves as well because
Yeah.
they think that they're doing something which is halal and something which is honorable when it clearly is not, whichever way you look at
Well,
it.
well,
You know,
this is the problem I find, and I've been to Morocco. Oh gosh, maybe 10 or 12 times now.
mm.
I've been all over. I have friends. I went there for a wedding. I was a bridesmaid there. There's a deep connection
So someone
to.
else's wedding.
Yeah, so that's just not my own. Um, but I just feel that this level of exploitation, and majority of the people are Pakistani men. So I feel deeply ashamed because these men are from my culture, they're from my, ethnicity, and they're behaving in this way. And challenging that narrative, challenging them is almost impossible because they then start quoting Islam. Oh, Islam allows us 4 wives, and we can do this, and Islam had this, and Islam. And I just think you guys don't even fulfill the most basic of your Islamic duties towards, like, I don't know, your wives or your parents or your children, and yet you feel the right to do this and then couch it in Islamic terms and then give yourself a pat on the back and then give each other a pat on the back because these men are doing it in, on their own in the silo. They're doing it with groups of other men as well. And if you actually, take a step back, and I'm kind of like, this is a little bit different to what we're talking about, but if you look at the grooming gangs, for
Mm.
example, what was it
It's
about
related.
groups groups of men thinking it's perfectly okay to behave in this way towards young girls, the mindset and so on. Again, it's pack mentality, and until we actually start addressing this, um, nothing's going to change.
And the thing
And
is,
and
as
the
you say,
worst,
they
yeah,
start quoting Islam and
yeah,
they make recourse to Sharia,
yeah,
you
yeah.
know.
The thing is,
And
is
the
is
thing is,
allowed.
which of course we don't have Sharia in this country, we have British legal system. But the thing is, it's like
Yes.
within the religion, there's fiqh and which is jurisprudence, and there's Sharia. And the thing is, you want to make recourse to Sharia. If there was really Sharia here, then they would
Mm.
actually be arrested and tried for various crimes under the Sharia
Yes.
because
Yes.
they're only quoting certain aspects without any understanding of what the Sharia
Mm.
actually is.
Mm, mm,
And the
mm,
other thing is, they're not understanding the maqasid of Sharia, which
mm.
is the actual reasoning, the purpose behind the Sharia. And
The
that is
mindset, yeah.
always, it's always to establish justice. It's always to
Mm,
make things better and more fair. It's never to make things worse for anyone, whether they be male or
mm,
female. It's to make things balanced and fair and equitable. And, in these particular situations, we can see how far from that it's doing the very opposite. So it
It's causing
fails on
so
this.
much harm. It's causing harm to actual people. It's causing harm to the community. It's causing harm to the way our religion is perceived. And also, I mean, you've mentioned about justice, but why do we talk about jihad so much? The personal jihad, the greater jihad, is
I
because of
don't, but
you
yeah.
have to control your ego. But it's all about controlling one's ego and
It
one's
is.
desires and one's sexual, drives and so on. There's none of this. There's none of this because they just feel that sense of entitlement that this is what we want and this is what we're entitled to. So we're going to go and do it, and then we're going to fit the religious sort of religious texts to fit this narrative. And
Well, the
again,
Prophet, peace be upon him, himself said that the
yes,
greatest jihad is
Sallallahu.
jihad and
Mm.
nafs, which means the struggle with the self, with your own
Yes,
weaknesses and your own inner demons.
and that's
Um,
the hardest. That is the
and he
hardest
actually taught
jihad of
people if you
all.
don't do that jihad, you're unqualified to do any other kind of jihad. You know,
Absolutely, stay at
that's the
home.
basis
Yeah.
of it. Yeah.
Hmm. So I think we have a situation where, we need to re-educate a lot of young people. And something else, Paul, since we're talking about this, I really want to point out about the idea of consent. So, this idea that if you're married to a woman, she is your property and you can have sex with her no matter what, when, however you want to, even if she doesn't want to. And I remember trying to give a lecture, I was asked to give a talk, sorry, at college in Bradford, where I spoke about this. And I said, you cannot have sex without your wives unless she consents. It's really important. And these men, just young men, just got up and walked out because they were so outraged with what I was saying, because the narrative that they had been told all their lives is no, once you're married, she's your property and you can do what you want with her, and she can't say no to you. If she does say no, then the angels are going to curse her till the morning and she's going to be cast into the hellfire. And these are the narratives that we were told as Muslim women, Muslim girls growing up, that your only role in life is to obey and agree to whatever your father, son, brother, and then your husband tells you to. So again, it's taking advantage of not having the religious knowledge or experience, and and I've seen this. Instead of encouraging women to go and seek independent Islamic knowledge for themselves, that's been frowned upon, because God forbid they'll go out and find out information then that they can use, they can actually support their own
Well,
case.
clearly, because which shows actually they must have some understanding that there are things within Islam which
Mm,
would empower women and would make them realize that this is completely the wrong narrative of Islam that they're being
mm,
told.
mm, mm.
Um,
But there's such a
yeah.
lot of thing. I mean, I talk to my son quite regularly about these topics. He's going to be 23 this year. So he is at the age now, he's studying. And at some point, I've always said it's your choice. If you want to get married, who you want to get married to, it's entirely your choice. We're not going to do what we had to face when I was a teenager, culturally, marrying your first cousin, or, having somebody arrange your marriage when you're really young, none of that. So again, these conversations are important, because if we don't, teach our next generation how to be a better person, forget being a better Muslim.
Mm.
It's about being a better person, being a better human, and treating one another with kindness and respect, which is the core aspect of Islamic teaching
Well,
anyway.
I was going to
If we
say
don't do
actually,
this,
if you
yeah.
if you had the traditional teachers of Islam, and pretty much
Mm,
anywhere in the world, they didn't start with teaching Quran and Sunnah. They
no.
started with teaching people adab and akhlaq, which is manners and respect.
Mm,
And
mm,
when
mm.
they
Yeah.
were asked why they're doing this, they said you
Mm,
cannot be a good Muslim if you're not a good human being. So
yeah.
that's actually the underlying basis of Islam, and
Mm,
then everything
mm.
else builds upon that.
I don't see that. I literally see people.
I don't
Um,
see it in many communities either. And it's
no,
like the
there's.
things, the points that you mentioned, which I'm sorry to say I'm not unaware of within certain, I mean, it's certainly not
Mm,
everyone, but there's certain
mm,
aspects of, the communities, they have been taught in this way.
mm,
Uh, and it's not surprising when you've got young people who've been raised up until adulthood, who have been taught those sorts of narratives in
mm,
terms of how they should relate to the opposite sex, how they should relate to
mm,
their wives when they get married, um, that there's going to be some problems with
mm.
getting on with the opposite sex and also getting on within a diverse society like the United Kingdom. It's obviously going to create problems because that's not the culture that we live in. That is
No,
not the
no,
understanding of society and human behavior that we have. And thank God for that, because that's not a good basis for a society at all. And it's not a good
no.
basis for a relationship. Even if you read in the Quran, Allah says that the male and female are like garments of one another,
They protect
which
one
is
another. Yeah.
equitable, which means that you're
Mm,
supposed to be there and support each other. Support, not take advantage, but support.
mm,
It's the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said in the hadith that I wasn't going to get into the religious stuff, but it disincenses me. The Prophet, peace be upon him, said in the hadith that the
Absolutely.
best men are the ones who are best to their wives or who are
Mm,
best to the women.
mm.
It's like, where is that? Where do we
No.
see that? I mean,
It's
that
really
is
heartbreaking,
Islam. That's from the
actually.
Prophet's own mouth. I mean,
So yeah, it's really heartbreaking, Paul. And I have obviously many young cousins. I have young members of my own family, and they don't want to get married. The girls are like, no. And if they do want to get married or they're thinking of it, they don't want to marry a Pakistani. And when I discuss this and I share that,
can't
this
say I
is
blame them.
yeah,
Yeah.
people are A,
Mm,
they're in denial,
mm.
and B, they think, oh, that's not, no, we're fine. There's nothing to be concerned about. Now, in my day, if you wanted a bride, you'd go to Pakistan and you could literally click your fingers and you'd have like families fighting for you to marry their daughters.
Mm,
That's not the case now. So many people in Pakistan who are successful, well-to-do, they will not touch a British-born Pakistani
mm.
now. And it's actually, and I don't blame them, by the way, I do not blame them. But there is an issue. Something has shifted massively in the mindset that, what, however badly, whatever our situation is in Pakistan, we do not trust our daughters to be safe and treated well if they are married to a British Pakistani. And
I
I
think
talk about this a lot.
there's
There's
two
so
things
much
in this.
denial in our community about this.
I think there's at least two aspects to this in Pakistan. One of them is the fact, as you mentioned there, that they're not trusting the diaspora community here because obviously
Hmm.
they know of people from their own
It's
communities that have
horror
got married to
stories,
British.
yeah.
Yeah, and they know about it. And secondly is the fact that Pakistan itself has moved on greatly since
Yeah,
the first
massively.
generations came here in those diaspora communities. I mean, when I speak to, I mean, I'm quite impressed often when I speak to Pakistanis from Pakistan. They have a totally different mindset to
They
people from
do.
here. They're often better educated. They're more, if they're women, they're more empowered and more on top of things. It's just in so many ways, even like they have a better sense of humor in many cases. And it's like, it's just like Pakistan's moved on. And I
Mm.
mean, with the recent geopolitical developments that we're seeing as well, Pakistan's starting to go places.
Yeah,
So, I mean,
absolutely.
of course, I mean, why would they entrust their daughters to a second class life in the UK where they're not going to be treated with respect? Um,
I think this is literally a ticking time bomb. I think we're going to see a massive issue with young men really struggling to get married, either in the UK or abroad. And again, then they're going to look for other areas, other places in the world where there is that poverty, there is that level of desperation where they can then take advantage. And hence, obviously, we've been speaking about Morocco earlier on today. So yeah, I can see this happening. And I can also see young British Pakistani girls never marrying or marrying and staying single and not having children, and just absolutely saying no to those gender norms gender roles that their mothers and their, other family members, older family members carried out, and they're saying no, we don't want to be somebody's slave or maid or nokar. We want our own lives, and we want equality, and we want respect, and we want etc etc. And the Pakistani men, unless we do something about it now, they're not equipped to deal with that level of progress that is required in order to meet the needs of Pakistani women, young Pakistani women right now in the UK. So again, that's a ticking time bomb.
even I've noticed. I mean, I've been a chaplain now for about 6 years at the University of Birmingham,
Hmm.
and also, I mean, I've been with the Association of British Muslims for about 15 years, and
Hmm.
even unofficially before that, I was kind of unofficially doing kind of chaplaincy work within the community without even realizing it, because people tended to seek me out and have
Hmm.
conversations with me and ask me for my advice on things. So you can imagine over the years that the things that I've been told and advice that's been sought, and in many cases some young British, Pakistani, and Bangladeshi women, and some of the
Hmm.
things that they've told me. So I'm very aware of the issues that you're highlighting, and yeah, I see the same thing. Many of them are moving away from marrying people from their own communities, unless they know that he's a particularly good person and he
Hmm.
has good qualities.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
it's like they're not looking for that.
Yeah.
And
And they're more self-sufficient if you think about
I've
when
even
I
heard
was a
of other
teenager.
cases where people of young British Pakistani or British Bengali girls
mm,
have been dating, or young women, they're not girls, you know,
mm,
they're grown up, young women, they've met young Muslim men. So not even people from outside of the religion, young
mm.
Muslim men from other communities,
Yeah.
and they want to get married to them. And their
Mm,
families have been totally opposed to this and have made
yeah.
trouble for them and even like threatened
Mm,
to disown them or even disowned them.
mm.
Where in Islam is that anywhere? I mean, as far as Islam is concerned, there is absolutely no reason why those young women can't get married to those men, even in the
Yeah.
most
No.
conservative,
But it is such
understandings of
a,
Islam.
yeah.
And
I
it
remember
shows it is cultural pressure
mm, mm.
and misogyny. It's not religion that is actually doing
It's
this.
about
And the
control.
reason
It's
I
about
highlight that is
control.
religion is often used as the excuse, both by those men and also by people from outside our faith community to attack
Yeah.
us as the reason. It is not the religion.
No, no. And then obviously it gets blamed, the religion gets blamed and seen as backwards or oppressive or controlling. And sorry, you've reminded me of a case many years ago of a British Pakistani woman who'd been divorced and she'd been single, which was I mean, even now it's still there's a taboo around being a divorced single mother. And she'd met a Kurdish guy and they got married, and the family were outraged because he was Kurdish, and the fact that she decided, like, she's going to get married. And she'd been, I think she was in her early 30s. So automatically they were said, oh, she's such an old woman. How dare she? This is such a shameful thing. And I remember a conversation with a woman. These are women, by the way, the handmaidens of patriarchy, as I call them, who said, well, if she was so desperate to get married, i.e., so desperate to sleep with a guy, we could have got her married, but she didn't say anything. And I just thought, this is so unfair. Marriage isn't just about sleeping with somebody. It's about
No.
companionship. It's about sharing your life with somebody. It's about growing old with somebody. And you've just reduced this whole beautiful thing of her meeting somebody and remarrying into this very sordid thing of, oh, well, she's only done this to basically, to have legitimate halal sex. But the mindset of these women were, and for me, my biggest takeaway from that scenario, that situation, was she exercised self-will. She exercised her own choice, and they could not handle this because it was all about what would the community say. And she didn't care. She was happily married, and I often think about her, and I give her so many du'as, because I just think, you did something that was so difficult at the time. The idea that you decided, I'm going to take control of my own life, my own destiny, nobody else is helping me, I'm going to do this for myself, and you did it, and you're happy. So again, I mean, thank God we have moved on from that mindset slightly. But I do feel this is a ticking time bomb, and I've said this so many times today. And I remember reading about stories in India, for example, where you were literally murdering fetuses, female fetuses. These women were having all these abortions, and in some states, the difference between men and women, the population is like 20%. So what are these men doing now? They want to get married, and there's a 20% or so gap. They're going around and kidnapping women from other states and taking them back home to marry them, because their parents thought, oh, yeah, let's just kill all these women. Let's just kill girls. So again, I just worry a lot about what we're going to face. I mean, thank God we're not going to. I don't think we're going to have people kidnapping women to marry them in the UK. Well, I hope not anyway. But we are going to see men who are going to be waiting and wanting to get married, and there's just the options that's just not going to be there, sadly, for the men, not
It,
for the
it,
women.
it's a shame because the solution itself, I mean, if we've got any young men who are finding it hard to get married,
Mm,
the solution is actually not that complicated. Just work on
mm,
yourselves, do some personal development,
mm, mm, mm,
understand and
mm,
respect women, treat them how, treat
mm,
people how you would like to be treated yourself. And that includes women,
mm,
treat them with respect and decency. And
mm,
you do that, you'll get on a lot better with them. You'll have better opportunities to form relationships. I mean, it's not that complicated, but you have
mm,
to have
mm.
respect for people.
It's all about respect. I think starting the basic aspects should be respect, no matter your gender, no matter your religion, no matter your ethnic background, or the subcategory within that. And I think we obviously we started talking about migrants and we've kind of diverged into this topic, but it's important because ultimately, we can't demonize people. And what I see is this narrative, the far right narrative is, and believe, I totally believe that the imagery that we've seen the last couple of days is going to be used now constantly by the far right to
Of course it is.
basically spread that fear that look, these hordes of young men are coming. I mean, look at the language that was on my ex yesterday. These fighting age men. It's an invasion. They're coming. They're taking over.
Even though they
We're
did
living
take
in
over,
fear.
they were only
No, they
there
went
for a
back.
day or so. It's basically a field trip for them. I mean,
Hmm,
yeah, no doubt. I mean, it must have been very traumatic for the people in Ceuta to see all these people
hmm, hmm,
suddenly,
hmm.
walking around on the streets and stuff. But at the same time, I mean, they have gone back. They haven't
Hmm,
took over. Um,
hmm.
so I mean, the narrative that's being given isn't correct. Also, although it is part of Spain, it is not in
Hmm,
Europe, the continent.
hmm,
It is
hmm.
quite far from Spain,
Yeah,
and it's like they can't. I mean, unless they're going to swim across the Mediterranean, which they're not going to do,
no,
then
no.
then they've got nowhere else to go. Even if they stayed in Salta, they wouldn't have
Hmm,
any. They wouldn't be able to get anywhere else.
no,
Um,
no.
so but I agree with you. The imagery looks quite shocking, and that imagery is going to be used by all sorts of activists who want to promote certain narratives, not necessarily
On
even those
like
on the far right.
X. Yeah,
It's
absolutely. I think also the attitude. I mean, I just want to wrap this up. But this whole thing of Italy, for example, Meloni turning around and suspending borders with Spain, like that was ridiculous. But again, that was the feeding into the far right narrative that we've got to stop, close the borders down. We can't let anybody in because they're going to come in like zombies and take over again.
We've
But
watched too
that's
many zombie movies. It's I
but
know.
that was the language that was uh, used not just by the far right, the press, but in the highest level of government in countries like Italy. And Pedro Sanchez, the Spanish prime minister, has actually rightly pointed out that this incident has shown just how deep rooted and deep seated the fear and hatred towards migrants is in Europe. There's a complete lack of understanding, and again, the whatever motivations of these young men that inspired them to cross into Ceuta and inspired them to, seek asylum or have a fun day out. Nobody's acknowledging and addressing the north-south divide, the fact that there's so much poverty, in countries, in continents like Africa, and of course they want a better standard of living. Of course they want to have a chance at earning and having a job and so on, which also happen to be in the north part of the world. So the west and the north, sorry. So I think if we're going to talk about these issues, we have to talk about inequality, injustice. We have to talk about the barriers to social equality, equity, which are conversations that people just don't want to have because it means that they have to then address the fact that their countries are responsible for a lot of the inequality that's we're seeing in countries like Morocco and Africa in general as well.
Well, clearly that there needs to be more investment in many of these countries to provide
Mm,
work and stuff. I think it's a problem also because I mean a lot of these European countries, including our own at the moment, have gone through some harsh economic times. So I mean, it's natural for our governments also. I mean, if they are, it's sometimes a question, to actually look at the development within this country and making sure that they provide that for British people and for European
mm,
people. But at
mm,
the
mm,
same time, I mean, clearly, if there isn't, if there aren't economic opportunities in countries like Morocco and Algeria and other countries around the world,
mm,
then you know people are going to sort of seek them elsewhere. And if there is this huge gap. I mean, I think it's
mm,
not so much even money, it's the quality of life. You know, if people can't have
mm,
security and quality of life in their own country, they are going to
mm,
seek it elsewhere. I mean, what we
mm,
mentioned Pakistan before, why now there is less of a desire of people from Pakistan, even though Pakistan is a state still with many of its own troubles and problems, but why there's
mm.
less of a desire of people in Pakistan now to migrate to the UK, and even some people who came here for a few years have moved back
They're
to
going back.
Pakistan. So I've got
I know.
friends
Yeah,
that I've
they've
known,
gone back.
they've actually gone back and they're doing quite well for themselves over there.
Mm,
There's less of a desire for that. Also from India as well, there's less of a desire for them to
mm,
stay here
mm,
because their countries are developing.
mm,
Um,
mhm,
and so it's like it's in a similar way. I mean, if the same thing happened in North Africa and also in the rest of Africa,
mm,
there would be less
mm,
of a desire of people to come here from
mm,
the African continent. But I mean, if that's the only way that they see that they can get forward for themselves in their lives, or earn enough to support their families, and
mm,
then they're going to try and get to Europe or some of the country where
mm,
they're able to do that.
mm,
Uh,
mm, mm.
so we have
And
to
we
deal
don't
with
talk.
these things at
Yeah.
their roots.
No, and we don't talk about people who've basically gone back. For example, after the Syrian war, after Assad was removed, we had an amazing Syrian restaurant in Keighley. The owner sold. They said, "Well, now that we can go back safely." They've gone back because that was their homeland. They've always wanted to go back, but they couldn't because of war. And I think a lot of this is this idea that people are coming over and then they're staying and they're not contributing and they're sucking the British public dry. That's just not true. So I think we need to
Even Eastern
also remind.
Europeans. We had a
Yeah,
lot of
yeah,
Eastern Europeans to come to the country, and we still
yeah.
do. But
Mm,
after Brexit, many started
mm,
moving back.
mm, mm,
And
mm, mm,
also, I mean, many only came here to earn some money so that they could actually, build something
mm,
back home. But I mean, there's
mm,
countries like Poland. I mean, Poland
mm,
is surging ahead economically now. And so a
yeah.
lot of Polish people, they're going back to Poland. Even some British
Mm,
people are moving there and making
yeah.
lives in Poland. So it's, you know,
Mm,
when this economic disparity sort of works itself out, then
mm,
you don't see so much of a desire for that.
mm, 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 mm. Honestly, right. I think we should wrap it up and then we should plan our next episode.
Sounds good to me. Thank you for joining us, Aisha. As always, it's enlightening to hear from you, and
Thank you.
you always have a great take on things. So,
Thank you. And we do need to talk about sugar puffs or honey puffs, whatever they're called now. Yeah,
sugar
our
puffs.
next conversation. Yeah. I think we should start our next session with just a roll call of all the things that they've changed that they need to change back to when it was, the
Yeah,
original
actually, that's
names.
that's true. There's been a lot of things that have been altered, haven't there? And you wonder why. It's
It's
yeah.
conspiracy. They just want to mess with our heads. That's what it
I
is.
think we've got it's just over the top political correctness, isn't it? No one wants to even slightly have the possibility, not offending, but don't want to have the slightest possibility that it could possibly perhaps cause offense to somebody somewhere. I mean,
Hmm,
which is a bit ridiculous.
it is. So no. We and then we could talk about Winston Churchill a little bit as well.
Sounds good to me. Awesome. Well, enjoy the rest of your weekend, Aisha. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so